This lesson is 8.4, Simplifying Rational Expressions. We're going to talk about how to simplify a rational expression, how to multiply a rational expression, and how to divide a rational expression. The first thing that you need to know is that rational expressions have a numerator and a denominator. So a rational expression has to be in a fraction format. If it doesn't have a numerator and a denominator, then it's not going to be rational. So that's the first thing that you look for, is the numerator and the denominator. When you simplify rational expressions, you're going to have three steps. The first step is to factor each part. The second step is going to be to cancel common terms, and this is going to be terms from the top to the bottom. Cancel common terms from top to bottom. And the third step is to write whatever's left for your answer. So you're going to write whatever is left over for your answer. So I'm going to do three steps. I'm going to factor, I'm going to cancel common terms from top to bottom, and I'm going to write what's left over as my answer. So here is what this would look like. I have an example, x squared plus 4x minus 5 divided by x squared minus 25, and I'm going to do my three steps. My first step is to factor. So I'm going to look at the numerator first, and I'm going to factor x squared plus 4x minus 5. If you recall from factoring, I'm looking for numbers that multiply to give me negative 5 and add to give me positive 4. So what multiplies to give me 5 and adds to give me 4? That would be x plus 5, x minus 1. 5 times negative 1 equals negative 5. 5 plus negative 1 equals 4. So that's the factors of the numerator. Then I'm going to factor my denominator, and I have x squared minus 25. Where this is missing the middle term, which would be 0. So I'm looking for factors of 25 that add to be 0. So what multiplies to give me 25 and adds to be 0? Well, that would be positive 5 and negative 5, because they multiply and give you negative 25. And they add to give you 0. That's the first step, factoring the problem, see what you've got. The second step now is going to be to cancel from top to bottom. I'm going to look and see what can I cancel. And so from top to bottom I see that I have an x plus 5 and I have an x plus 5. Those are going to cancel. And I'm left with x minus 1 over x minus 5, which does not cancel. So my leftover part is x minus 1 over x minus 5. So that is a simplified rational expression. I factored, I canceled, and I wrote what was left over. That's how you simplify. Next we're going to do some multiplying, and you're going to see some very familiar steps. So to multiply rational expressions, here's your steps. First step, factor. Second step, cancel. Top to bottom. Third step, write what's left over as the answer. Those are the exact same steps as when we simplify. And it's the exact same process. The only difference is going to be that when you multiply rational expressions, there's going to be a little bit more to it. We're not just going to have one numerator and denominator, we're going to have two numerators and two denominators. So let's look at an example of how you multiply rational expressions. So for this one I have x squared plus 4x plus 3 divided by x squared plus 5x plus 6. I have x squared minus 3x minus 10, and it's divided by x squared plus x. Since I am multiplying and multiplication is straight across, I'm just going to connect this as if it's one big problem. That just makes it easier for me to see. That may not work for you, but that's one way you can look at this problem. Now the first step I have to go through with my 3 steps is factoring. So I'm going to start by factoring x squared plus 4x plus 3. What multiplies to give me 3 and adds to give me 4? Well, 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 plus 1 is 4. Now I'm going to factor x squared plus 5x plus 6. What multiplies to give me 6 and adds to give me 5? How about 3 and 2? Okay. Continuing on, now I'm going to factor x squared minus 3x minus 10. What multiplies to give me negative 10 and adds to give me negative 3? This one may be a little bit harder for you to think of, but negative 5 and positive 2 multiply to be negative 10, and negative 5 and positive 2 add to be negative 3. Finally, I have x squared plus x. This is a type of problem we didn't look at very often, but it just means there's a 0 at the end. X squared plus x plus 0, there's no constant at the end. So how does this factor? Well, we just take an x out of what we have. We have x squared, and we have x, and both of these terms have an x, so I take that x to the outside, and when I divide that out, what's left is x plus 1. Now I'm going to look to see what will cancel from top to bottom. I see an x plus 3, cancels top to bottom. I see an x plus 1 that cancels top to bottom, and I see an x plus 2 that cancels top to bottom. So that's going to leave me with just x minus 5 and x. So when I write my solution, it's going to be x minus 5 over x. That is the solution to my problem. So factor, cancel, and write what's left over. The third thing we're going to do today is division, and here are the steps for dividing. The first step for division is different from the other steps. The first step in division is that you have to flip the second fraction. Flip the second fraction. When you divide with fractions, you have to keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. So you keep the first fraction, you change from division to multiplication, and you flip the second fraction. Then from there, my steps are going to look familiar. Factor. Step 3 is to cancel. Step 4 is to write what's left over. So dividing has one step more than simplifying and one step more than multiplication, but the process is going to be exactly the same. So let's look at an example of how that would be. This one, I'm going to do the first step, which is to flip my second fraction. So I'm going to rewrite this as 10x to the 4th over 3xy squared times xy to the 4th over 6x squared y. As you can see, my numerator became the denominator and my denominator became the numerator. Now I'm going to factor this, but factoring is going to look a little bit different. So for me, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite it a little bit. I'm going to write it as 10, and I'm going to write x to the 4th as 4 x's. So 1, 2, 3, 4. In my denominator, I have a 3 and an x, and I have y squared. So y squared is going to become y. On the second fraction, in my numerator, I have an x, and I have y to the 4th, which I will rewrite as 1, 2, 3, 4 y's. And then in my denominator, I have 6 x squared becomes x times x, and I have a y. Writing it out like this makes it easier for me to see what cancels. So now I'm going to cancel. 1x in the top cancels with 1x in the bottom. 1x in the top cancels with 1x in the bottom. Cancel, cancel. That's all of the x's that will cancel. Now I'm going to look for y's. 1y in the top cancels with 1y in the bottom. 1y, 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 1y. And I'm left with a 10 and an x and a y and a 3 and a 6. Now I need to look at my numbers. 10 and 3 and 6. 10 and 6 are both divisible by 2. So I'm going to end up using that information in just a second when I write the answer to this. Let me see what space I've got. Let's try and clear off some space. So I have 10. Okay, so my x's here are gone. I have a 10 and an x and a y, and I have a 3. These x's and y's are gone. I have a 6, and these x's and y's are gone. So if I write this together, I'm going to have 10. Let's try that again. 10x squared over 3 times 6, which is 18. Okay, so let's put some space here so you can see what I've got. This is 10x squared over 18. 10 over 18 will reduce. They're both divisible by 2, so I'm going to have 5x squared over 9. That's my solution, 5x squared over 9. Okay, I hope that wasn't too confusing. I think I'm going to go back and work through this problem again and just make sure that you understood the steps. Actually, I think if you have a question about this that didn't make sense, please feel free to rewind it, and then if you have more questions, go ahead and ask me in class. Now, the last thing for you is your assignment. The assignment is page 128 through 129, problems 1 through 18. That's going to be all. But there are some hints that I have for you for some of the problems. For problem number 1, the problem says 3x minus 3 divided by 6. And I have factored this for you so you can see that 3x minus 3 actually factors to become 3 times x minus 1, because since you had a 3 in common, if we bring the 3 to the front, it leaves x minus 1 in its place. Then from here you would simplify it. And the way you would simplify it is that 3 and 6 are both divisible by 3, so that would leave you with a 1 and a 2. So your answer for number 1 is just x minus 1 over 2. There's a little bit extra help for you. Then I have a couple more hints. On number 2, the problem is already factored, so all you have to do is cancel it. You don't have to factor it, you just have to cancel. For number 7 and 8, you're not factoring, you're just writing them out and then going to cancel it again. So write out, if you have x squared, write it as x times x. If you have y to the third, write it as y times y times y. Then cancel. And for number 17, it says x squared plus 9x plus 18 divided by this fraction over here. But this one is not as a fraction. So what you do is you write it as over 1. So I have x squared plus 9x plus 18 divided by 1. And then remember, your first step for division is to flip the second fraction. So x squared minus 9x plus 18 becomes the numerator, and x squared minus 3x minus 18 becomes the denominator. Then from here you factor and cancel. If you have any questions, please see me during class. I'll be happy to help you.